Welcome to our webinar, the 2025 Finance Leader Outlook, brought to you by Bill. I'm Joe Fleischer. I'm excited to serve as your moderator. I'm more excited to hear from our distinguished experts, Lilah Raynor, CEO of Logica Research, and Germaine Cota, Senior Vice President, Finance and Accounting with Bill, will share the findings and discuss the implications of the 2025 Finance Leader Outlook. And let me tell you about our distinguished experts. Lilah Raynor, I mentioned, is CEO of Logica Research, a research consultancy that specializes in marketing research that helps companies uncover insights to improve people's financial lives. And Lilah has been conducting research in the financial space for more than 25 years, and results from Logica studies for Logica's clients have been published in some of the largest media outlets in the world. Germaine Cota, who I mentioned is Senior Vice President of Finance and Accounting with Bill, has a very distinguished career. Indeed, before she joined Bill, she was Chief Accounting Officer and Treasurer at 8x8 Inc., U.S. CFO at Mercari Inc., and Assistant Controller at LinkedIn. And prior to joining LinkedIn, Ms. Cota spent nearly 10 years in assurance and advisory services at Ernst & Young LLP. It is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Lilah and Germaine. Please give a warm welcome to them.
Thanks so much, Joe, and happy to be here with you, Germaine, talking about the insights from the Finance Leader Study. Before I get into some of the details about financial management priorities, I did want to talk about who was included in this study. So we talked to 354 finance leaders in the United States. They work in their company's accounting and finance departments. They may also be C-suite. Generally, they're senior decision makers. And they're working at companies with under 1,000 employees and typically under 100 million in revenue. So we'll get into some of the details about who's in the study and what their opinions are. We generally had a mix of firm size under that 1,000 employee size. So when we look at priorities for 2025, we see that managing cash flow is really at the top of the list, especially during these economic conditions. And then that's closely followed by implementing FP&A and making better business decisions with insights from analysis. If you look at the dark orange bars there, that's really what's at the top of the list. If you look at the light orange bars there, companies are really increasing resources across the board, but also in those top three areas. A little bit lower down on the list are things like controlling spend, implementing financial automation and AI, improving risk management, attracting talent, which we'll get into, as well as protecting from fraud and cybersecurity threats. So before we get into some of those details, Germaine, I wanted to ask you, how this resonates with you with what you've been seeing in the Bill customer base or in the market as a whole.
I think this makes a ton of sense. I mean, the macroeconomic factors over the course of the last couple of years have been very challenging. We've had, unprecedented interest rate increases over the course of the last 2 years, and only now has that really subsided. But that certainly creates a strain on availability of capital, and we have seen a much more conscious and thoughtful decision-making process around spend, right? And so these top two priorities for leaders at businesses, finance leaders at businesses, makes a ton of sense. It is, I think, on everyone's mind to figure out what the external factors, like plan better for what external factors could bring, and certainly be much more conservative with their spending. In terms of the resources that are being allocated, certainly makes sense as well. I mean, I would expect that leaders are allocating resources to those areas of priority. One thing that I did actually find very interesting, while it's not unexpected that these were the results, and maybe this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, is that I think there's a pretty resounding opinion around technology, automation, AI being a very prominent force in the future of business. And probably a little surprised that that fell more in the middle of the list, both with prioritization um, as resource focus.
We'll see a couple themes here, right, around cash flow management, using insights to manage cash flow and do planning, and then where technology comes into play. The next piece here we're going to talk about is automation and AI. And as Germaine was just saying, we see technology being top of mind, having the biggest impact on operations in the next 3 years, more than twice as much as some of the other areas we asked about, including company decision making, cybersecurity, privacy and fraud, and shifts in economic and government factors. So if you unpack that technology piece a bit, AI is top of the list. Again, probably not that surprising, but twice as much as automation or digital payments overall. And when we look at how companies are making progress toward financial operations in general, there's a lot of progress being made. If we look at the left-hand side first, these are the areas that are where there's maybe not automation or it's not applicable. So like the very bottom, procurement is not as much of a automation focus for companies, or it's not as applicable to them. But at the top of the list, you have accounts payable, where there's a lot of progress being made at some stage, along with financial reporting and accounts receivable being those top three, where still a fraction of the companies are completely automated, but they are at some stage in that process. And then there's plans to automate within the next 3 years. If you look at that far right column there, you also see that cash flow management is really, again, top of mind as an area for automation in the next 3 years, along with those top two, like financial reporting, which is at the highest where companies are really going to focus. And so we also wanted to understand how satisfied these finance leaders are with their automation and digitization processes right now. And there's a lot of positivity. 3 in 10 are saying they're completely satisfied, 6 in 10 somewhat satisfied, but also room for improvement. Across the board, there are a lot of benefits of automation. And again, probably not super surprising at the top of the list for these finance leaders are accuracy, real-time analytics, speed, and saving time. You also see things like allowing for integration and syncing, addressing security issues, allowing people to move to higher value tasks and be able to work remotely, and be able to have stronger control over spending and budgets.
And this seems very consistent with cash flow management, financial planning at the bottom of the list as it relates to how automated they are or how much technology is being utilized. And so, again, makes sense that resources and that being the higher value procedures and processes are where leaders are really focusing their resource time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to dig into cybersecurity and fraud a bit more here. And on the left here, you see about 1 in 5 who have experienced a cybersecurity breach. Kind of side note on that, that's absolutely more prevalent with the larger firms that we talk to. But we're also seeing a growing concern around payments fraud. So about half of the finance leaders we spoke to are really concerned about payments fraud. And again, we see that sort of optimism, but mixed confidence and protection around financial security and payments fraud, with about 3 in 10 being very confident, and another 2/3 somewhat confident. So again, so room for improvement to try to address these issues. We wanted to understand what stage are companies really in when it comes to cybersecurity. And again, we have this range of really small, kind of under 10 employee companies. They're more likely to be in this reactionary stage, responding to threats as they happen, or in that early stage, just trying to understand it. When we look at sort of the intermediate stage, And then the mature stage, we see that larger companies are more likely to be in that mature stage. But we even have 1 in 5 who are not responding to cybersecurity threats at all. And they